Well, good afternoon. This is Barry Odell with the Church of Christ at Mammoth Spring Facebook page. It is Monday, December 1st, 2025. Hope everybody's doing all right today. It's been a little while since I've done any streaming from my office. Had a lot of other stuff going on, but this is a study that was requested of me, so here we go. Lyle, good to see you. If you join on and you want to, you say hello in the comment section here. Ask questions, make comments. Of course, as I always do, I'm recording the audio that will be uploaded to our Podbean channel. And of course, once the live stream video is over, I will upload this video content to our YouTube channel. Hey, Connie, good to see you. So it's December 1st. We're getting some wintry mix outside. It's been about 27, 28 degrees all day, and I love this kind of weather. Cold. My favorite time of year. I don't know exactly how long this video is going to be today or exactly what all we're going to cover. I've got a lot of material on Islam and Muhammad. This, like I said, this is a study that was requested of me. Of course, a lot of this, obviously, all right, I'm 46, so 24 years ago, of course, we had the attack in New York City, Washington, and then, of course, the plane that went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And that has kind of, I don't know how I would say it exactly, but that affected to a great degree a lot of people's lives my age, younger, a little bit older. It's hard to believe now that there's so many people who don't even know what happened. Of course, who were not alive then, and have frankly been misled by the media and politicians about the nature of Islam and the Quran and Muhammad and things like this. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. And like I said, I don't know exactly everything we're going to cover yet. Today is very introductory. I've got a lot of information. So, kind of like what I was saying, people have an interest in this topic. And I just did some cursory searches on Google. All right, I asked some very simple questions. All right, so I wrote these things down, so I'll be looking down to read these things to you. A mosque. Okay, we hear of mosques. That the term literally means a place of prostration. All right, place to worship for Muslims, things like this, place of prayer. From what I could find, there are 3,967 mosques in the United States. And in terms of the population in our country, depending on what, and this was interesting to me, depending on who did the survey, you're going to get different numbers. Anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 million Muslims live in America. Now that's quite a discrepancy, 2 million. But like I said, it depends on who you ask, apparently. 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. It's the third largest religion in the United States behind Christianity and Judaism. It's the fastest growing religion in the world. The top places in terms of population: Indonesia, Pakistan, and India, New York, California, and Illinois in the United States. Those three states have the largest number of Muslims in them. So I've got several images we're going to look at today, but here's a map of the United States. And now this is based on the 2020 census estimate of populations per state. And you can see on that map, California, Texas, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey had seems to be highest concentration of Muslims, and then it goes down from there. Arkansas, where I am, is less than 10,000. I looked at another survey, and it said, I think in Arkansas there were, I think the number is like 6,700, something like that. So of course, we're not a heavily populated state, but that's not a great number. So I'm going to have several maps and things like this. Maps, some quotes that I'm going to share with you to look at. Connie says it's crazy how the media portrays Islam. It is, and we'll look at that. And I don't know that we're going to get into that today, but that's something interesting to think about. Sheila, good afternoon. Hey, David, good to see you. All right, so I gave you all of those numbers. A couple things I want to share with you or show you. So I have read the book. I guess one way to say it is the Bible of the Islamic faith, the Quran. I've actually read 3 different versions, and I've read them multiple times. All right, so and I'm not going to claim to be a scholar or anything like that. I'm not going to be able to answer every question that everybody may ask, but I have done research, quite a bit of research over the last several years. I've taught some classes on it, but I do have 3 different versions of the Quran, and each of these is accepted or let's say authoritative. There are versions of the Quran that faithful Muslims will not tolerate. All right, they won't accept as authentic, as authoritative. To me, it's kind of like the discussion in Christian circles of which English version do you use. It's similar to that discussion. So the first one, this is the first one I ever purchased for myself, is called The Meaning of the Glorious Quran, and it was done by Muhammad Marmaduke Pickthall. And you can search that online. I forget how much I paid for this, but not much at all. I've got some quotes that I want to show you. So let me say this before we get into those quotes. I've got that one. I've got the Quran by Abdel Halim. That is another accepted, authoritative version of the Quran. And then I received this one a few years ago from a school administrator, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, was going around and putting these in school libraries all over the country. So I got a call from a school administrator, and the person was a friend and a member of the church, and he said, "Come get this thing. I don't want it here." So I got an official. It's called The Message of the Quran, translated and explained by Muhammad Asad. And it's a hefty book here. It's hardback, pretty thick, and like I said, a lot of explanatory notes and things like this. So, like I said, I have done a lot of reading of the Quran. I've done a lot of research, various articles, both from a Christian perspective, both Christian perspective, secular perspective, and then also an Islamic perspective, because you want to be fair. You don't want to misrepresent anything. You want to do the best you can in your research. There's a lot into that. Let's see, I'm trying to read that comment. Don't know exactly what it says. Did not know that. Anyway. Oh, Texas. Okay, a lot in Texas. Yeah. Yeah, Texas, definitely. Watching from Malawi, Africa. Venero, good to see you. Hello, Marie. Happy Monday to you. All right. So, I've got those 3 versions of the Quran. And just like with Christianity, you have to go to its source of authority to know what it is, what it teaches, its foundations, its principles, things like this. Well, that's what the Quran is. Now, you also have the Hadith, or and they're not in the Quran, but they are the sayings of Muhammad. Now, I've got that kind of stuff printed off. I don't have it right here in front of me, but like I said, I've done my research. I've done a lot of research over the years. So let me just show you some excerpts on, let's say, reviews on these 3 different versions of the Quran. Now, the third one that I showed you, that big hardback one by Muhammad Asad, it was, from what I could tell in my research when I first got that, is like it's a liberal version. That would be from a Christian perspective, that would be the term that we would use. It's kind of like the way I'd put it. It's kind of like the NIV of the Quran. All right, it's not nearly as highly recommended as Muhammad Pickthall's or Abdel Halim's version. Anyway, that's just interesting to note. So I want to show you some comments, some reviews on those versions, and we'll start with Muhammad Pickthall's, because again, in fact, I'll read this to you from the introduction. I've got some things highlighted here, which this is actually a historic book in terms of the Islamic impact in English, maybe. So it was done in 1930, and part of the translator's foreword says, "This is the first English translation of the Quran by an Englishman who is a Muslim. Some of the Some of the translations include commentaries offensive to Muslims and almost employ a style of language which Muslims at once recognized as unworthy. So, like I said, not every version of the Quran is looked upon favorably by faithful Muslims. It's not a bad thing to know. But this is a kind of a common thread that I've seen in this introduction. The Quran cannot be translated. That is the belief of old-fashioned sheiks and the view of the present writer. The book is here rendered almost literally, and every effort has been made to choose befitting language. It goes on to say, every care has been taken to avoid unwarranted renderings. So it's trying to be a literal translation of the Quran. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting to notice, or to note. Again, this was done in 1930, and it is the first English translation of the Quran by an Englishman who is a Muslim. So if you're interested, I don't know if you could get it on Amazon. A website that I like to use to get books, particularly used books, if I don't want to spend a lot of money, is just type in abebooks.com and type in, you could search for the meaning of the glorious Quran, or you could search for Muhammad Pickthall. Anyway, that's good stuff to know. So here are some reviews, some comments on Pickthall's translation. Here's a comment that's just come in. Sheila says, I think the scariest part is that infidels must die. Bow a knee to Islam or die. I read part of the Quran in the 80s out of curiosity, violent religion. And see, that's part of the struggle that people have with it, because it is so often portrayed as a religion of peace. I mean, it's amazing to me how since 2001, all of our media, generally speaking, all of our media, all of our presidents, all of our politicians, how strongly they have leaned into Islam as a religion of peace. And we're not going to get into that today in detail at all. I can't right now, but that's just a misleading statement. I mean, from its very inception, within a few years of Muhammad's the supposed initial revelations that he received on the mountain, within just a few years, he starts fighting wars. Islam started out very small, just within his own clan, within his own family. His wife being the first convert. He had I think it was a cousin who was the age of 13 who became an early convert. It was like with 40 people or so in the beginning. But then he starts essentially waging war against those who would persecute him. And it's not stopped. That war has not stopped. Okay, jihad. We've heard that term. But anyway, here are some quotes about Muhammad Pickthall's translation of the Quran. Marmaduke Pickthall's translation of the Quran, titled The Meaning of the Glorious Quran, stands as a monumental work in the realm of Islamic literature. Published in 1930, it was the first English translation of the Quran undertaken by a Muslim whose native language was English, making it a significant milestone in making the Quran accessible to English-speaking audiences. Prior to Pickthall's translation, most English translations of the Quran were conducted by non-Muslims, often reflecting their own interpretive biases and lacking the nuanced understanding of Islamic language. Another one. Pickthall aimed to provide a translation that was as close to the original Arabic text as possible without extensive interpretation. His approach was literal, striving to convey the exact meaning of the Quranic verses while maintaining the structural and syntactical integrity of the original language, sentence structure, all that stuff. This literalness ensured that the translation was a reliable resource for understanding the Quran's message. However, it also meant that some nuances and poetic elements inherent in the Arabic language were challenging to capture fully in English. And that's not uncommon. I mean, we could even, to an extent, say the same thing about the Bible. Translating from one language to another, you can't do it literally word for word because it just becomes clumsy and unreadable. Translation is a science, but it's also an art. So that's important to know. More than 90 years after its initial publication, Pickthall's translation continues to hold relevance in both academic and religious context. It is frequently referenced in scholarly works and remains a staple in academic research related to Islamic studies. And then this, Marmaduke Pickthall's The Meaning of the Glorious Quran, as a seminal work that has significantly contributed to the accessibility and understanding of the Quran among English-speaking populations. Its historical significance as the first English translation by a native English-speaking Muslim cannot be overstated, laying the groundwork for future translations and fostering greater cross-cultural and interfaith understanding. So I think it's good to look at all of that stuff, not just the Quran itself, but what people say about it. And in particular, what Muslims say about it, because they are, I guess the word I would use would be picky about which translation is acceptable and which is not. Now, here's a part of a quote on the translation of, well, let me just put it back up here on the screen before I do that, of Abdel Halim, again, another accepted version. Most popular translators have not been able to successfully adapt their translation to familiar English grammar. Abdel Halim's translation is an excellent adaptation of the Arabic Quran into modern, easy-to-understand English language and avoids the common archaism found in other translations. Words such as hath, doth, and doeth, which interrupt the flow of reading, are not used, and the reading is fluid and enjoyable. It's kind of, to me, so like Pickthall's would be the King James Version, and Halim's would be the New King James Version. That's kind of a parallel. This aspect is particularly important because the original Quran is written in clear and easy to understand Arabic, and English remains loyal to this aspect of the original Quran. Halim's translation is also written in a more familiar novel book layout, encouraging readers to read from front to back. All right, so I just think that stuff is good to acknowledge, important for us to understand if we're going to have a understanding of Islam. How deep do you want to go in all this? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how long today's video is going to last. I don't know how many videos I'm going to do on this at all. We'll just have to see. I have multiple 1-inch 3-ring binders full of material that I've put together personally, stuff that I've written, stuff that other people have written. Apologeticspress.org. They've done a fantastic job. They have a lot of articles. They have a lot of videos that they've done on this. So if you want to dig deeper into this for yourself, deeper than I'm going to go probably, go to apologeticspress.org. I've got some stuff written by fellow preachers here. So, like I said, we'll just see how this goes. Okay, where is Muhammad from? Well, he's from Mecca, which we today would call Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. There's a closer in map. You can see Iraq, Iran, Yemen, the Sudan, Egypt, etc. You see all that stuff. And then here's kind of a backed out image, way backed out. You can see it's just east of what we typically refer to just as the continent of Africa. You've got Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, all of that stuff. And then you and I are way over there to the west in the United States, obviously. All right, what next? Okay, let's think about this. I'm going to obviously include scripture today, kind of laying some groundwork for what we may study next. And listen, if you have questions, if you want me to address something specific, put it in the comment section here. Send me a message either on my personal Facebook page or on the church's page here, and I will make note of that, and we'll hit it. It is a very common, and I think cross-religion understanding or belief that Islam came from Hagar and Ishmael. I tend to lean in that direction too, and there's a reason for that. And the reasoning goes back to God's promise to Abraham. Abram marries this woman named Sarai, and we learn from the biblical text that she cannot have children. Yet God promises Abraham that he's going to be the father of many nations. All right, going back to Genesis chapter 12, I'm going to make of you a great nation. I'm going to give you land, and through your descendants, King James uses the word seed, all nations of the earth will be blessed. And that promise is repeated multiple times, not only to Abraham, but then it's reiterated to Isaac and Jacob, the nation of Israel at large, as the nation grows while it's in Egyptian captivity. God makes that promise to Abraham when he is 75 years old. Sarah would then be 65. Okay? They wait for, what is it 10 years? Let's see. I think that's right. I have to get my Bible out here. I've got the app up there, but I've got all the notes. I don't have any notes in my app. They're all written in my personal Bible. I believe it's 10 years. Okay, we're waiting on this promise. We've been told that we're going to have many descendants like the stars. If you can count the stars of the heavens, if you can count the sand that's on the seashore, that's what your descendants will be like. But Sarah can't have children. So, yeah, it's right here in Genesis chapter 16. We'll just start reading here in verse 1. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And he did. Then Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her handmaid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. And then you notice this here. After Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So now he's 85. Sarah's now 75. No kids yet. They wait 10 years. And you think about it. So this promise was made to them. 10 years, I mean, that's a long time. But God told them, I'm going to keep this promise. All right, essentially. That's what he says. Well, Hagar conceives, and she becomes despised in Sarah's eyes. Sarah's jealous, naturally. And that's kind of a thing. So if it is the case, if it is indeed the case that is the Islamic faith, that Muslims are descendants of Abraham through Ishmael, you have to understand the implication of that. Abraham and Sarah are messing with God's plan. God has a plan. He's made a promise. We know that he's going to keep his promise, but it's not working out fast enough for them. Like I say, 10 years, that seems to be a long time to wait. I mean, you've already told me I'm going to have kids. So they wait 10 years. And so not only is that a long time to wait, but in their lack of patience, and I would say lack of faith in God's promise, they take things in their own hands. And as it says here at the end of, in verse 4, Genesis 16, he went in to Hagar, she conceived, and when Sarah saw that she conceived, Hagar became despised in her eyes. You are messing with God's design for the family. I mean, that's a baseline level. Okay, it's Abraham and Sarah. They're married. That Hagar should never have come into the picture. You're messing with God's structure of the family. But on a higher level, you're messing with God's scheme of redemption. He made you a very specific promise. Sarah's going to have a child. Abraham and Sarah are going to have children. This is not that. This is not that plan. Paul writes an allegory in Galatians chapter 4. I think it starts in verse 21. The end of Galatians chapter 4 about this account. So anyway, Sarah gives Hagar to Abram. Hagar conceives. And then, again, on the baseline level, you've messed with the family. Think about how Sarah feels now. This is my husband. I can't get pregnant. So here's another woman. Just think about what that would do to a family, a husband and wife. My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me. And Abram said to Sarah, indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do with her as you please. Now, it's like falling apart. God had a plan. They abandoned that plan. Now their plan is like, it's just made a mess of their family structure. Sarah dealt harshly with her, and Hagar runs away. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur, Genesis 16:7. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from? Where are you going? Well, I got to get away from there. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. And the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And then you have this. And this is the basis for that idea that this is where Muhammad, the Islamic faith, came from. You are with child, you shall bear a son, you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. That's the meaning of his name. The Lord has heard. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. You can't get the descendants of Ishmael are going to intermingle with everybody that they live near. He shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Every man's hand will be against him. I've got something I printed off years ago, a list of attacks on our, what we call homeland, in the name of Allah, in the name of Islam. Everywhere they have a presence, you have chaos. Everywhere. You have honor killings. You have terrorism. You have demands on government. So here's something I looked up too today, just again, kind of by way of introduction. And I'm of the opinion here that this particular discussion has become more people have become interested in this discussion because of recent developments in the United States government. So this is just an AI overview. I asked Google, I forget exactly what I asked Google. I just said, how many Muslims are in the United States government? Okay. Muslims hold various positions in the U.S. government, with a record number elected to office in recent years, and several serving in the executive branch. Notable Muslim members of Congress include Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and several in the Biden administration. And it names a few specifics. The number of Muslim Americans running for office has been increasing, and they have a strong tendency to affiliate with the Democratic Party. I don't think that's incidental either. I really don't. The Democratic Party is for everything that Christians stand against. And I will say that without hesitancy. So it's no surprise to me when I read something like, the number for Muslim Americans running for office has been increasing, and they have a strong tendency to affiliate with the Democratic Party. Current composition. This is as of August 2025. There are 9 Muslim members in the 119th Congress, 6 in the House, 3 in the Senate. Ilhan Omar was the first Muslim woman of color to be elected. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. I don't care what race they are. But America is so entrenched in identity politics, in intersectionality, that stuff matters. How oppressed are you? That's what moves you up the ladder in the political realm. Let's start out, are you a woman? Are you not straight? Are you a different nationality? And the more of those standards you meet, the higher you move up in power. Okay. Okay, in the executive. So again, this is just an AI response to my question. In the Biden administration, over 70 Muslims served in the administration, and it lists several. Lena Khan, Samira Fazili, Rashad Hussein. Increasing numbers. There's been a trend of record-breaking numbers of Muslim Americans running for office at local, state, and national levels. Dearborn, Michigan. Check that out. The majority of Muslim Americans identify as Democrats. This increase in political participation is driven by a growing involvement in all areas of American life, including politics. And it goes on from there. I'm going to sit here and read that whole thing to you. But it's just interesting. And of course, I think the biggest news probably is the mayoral race for New York City. And Zoran Mamdani winning that race. He's 34 years old, no experience. A 34-year-old Democratic socialist who is a Muslim. It's going to be interesting to watch what happens there. Government run everything. Grocery stores, rent. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. New York has done this to themselves. Yeah. Those two women in our government are horrible. And again, everything to the left is what they stand for. If Trump and Kennedy get it done, they will have to leave our government. That kind of stuff, I'll believe it when I see it. It's kind of like prosecuting. It's like convicting former presidents of crimes and things like this. And I don't want to get off into that stuff too much. We may obviously have to talk about some political stuff, but I don't know, man. Anyway, back to Genesis chapter 16. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. The picture is of chaos and rebellion. I don't know how else to say it other than that. And you look at Muslim countries, you look at what's happened in our country, particularly since 9/11, and even before that, back into the 70s, you even see those kinds of terroristic activities. Here's one thing that I've said, and I will always say it. If you read their book, if you just go to abebooks.com or you go to Amazon, read their book, and you will never have to ask yourselves, why'd they do that? Because he's a wild man. And because his hand is against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all of his brethren. That's what Scripture tells us. And their Scripture tells us the same thing. Heavy on violence. Heavily on, I won't use the word assimilating into populations because they don't do that, but slowly gaining foothold. One of the pillars of Islam is submission to Allah. And when you do that, the belief is when you do that, when I submit to him and when I submit to his prophet Muhammad, I don't have to submit to anybody else. I don't have to submit to any form of government. So that's something to keep in mind too. I think I'm going to stop there for today. This has been very surface level, very introductory. I understand that, but I think you got to start somewhere. And so, like I said, if you have questions, if you want particular subjects addressed, send me a message. Send a message to the church page. Either way, I don't care. And I will make note of that and we'll address those things. So we'll come back tomorrow at 2 o'clock and we'll kind of pick up. I think we'll talk more tomorrow about Muhammad and his upbringing, his background. He's born in 570 AD, and he received his first revelation when he was 40, in 610, in a mountain cave when he was in a trance. So I think that's kind of where we'll pick up tomorrow, learning more about him and how all of this came to be, how the Quran came to be and all that good stuff. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you being on here today. I appreciate the comments. I always want you to feel free to do that. Like I said, I'm recording the audio. That'll be uploaded to Podbean, and this video will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Sheila says, I cannot remember because it's been so long since I read it. Didn't problems arise over the altar Israel made and Islam saying it was theirs? This is going to be a refresher for me too, Sheila. There's a lot. One of the things, and so I made some notes in the front as I read through this version of the Quran, Muhammad Pickthall's. The Quran has a heavy reliance on uninspired Jewish sources, and it's extensive. One man said that reliance on uninspired Jewish sources is extensive and specific. There are things included from the Jewish Talmud and from Jewish folklore. You have Bible characters mentioned throughout the Quran that, like, they're grouped together incorrectly. They were not alive at the same time, but the Quran mixes things up like that. One thing I wrote in the front of this is that the Talmudic and Jewish traditions are highlighted. So like I said, I did a lot of research several years ago because I was getting ready to teach through it again for the first time. So we'll look at that kind of stuff. Well, appreciate it, Lau. Appreciate it, Connie. Good to see you guys on here. Hope to see you back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So, like I said, if you have questions or topics, send me a message and I'll make note of it. Guys, hope you have a good day. Stay warm and hope to see you back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock.